A Nascent Kaleidoscope. Chapter 176. It was a beautiful sight, the flaming wreckage of a noble phantasm fortress falling from the heavens. How ironic that my fake Levitian took out a fortress that could almost be like Asgard if you squint hard enough. A reenactment of myth? It was possible that such an action had an effect on the actualization of the phantasm to produce a more powerful attack. This was my first time casting the spell. There were many things I needed to go over and tweak for the future. It was actually ScatHack who helped me theorize this completed form in the first place, back when I was training. The others around didn't speak, as we all watched the fireworks in the distance. The moment the fortress hit the ground, a colossal wave of magical energy cascaded out in every direction, enough that my hair was blown to the side. It certainly did bring a smile to my face as I pet Sir Wiggles. Well then, I guess my head isn't going to end up on a spike anymore, I said as I turned around towards Vlad. He flinched at my sudden address, maybe shocked a bit at my magical display. Perhaps we should negotiate the terms of our ceasefire, I raised my hand up, and both the spear and the sword turned to point towards them. All the servants quickly regained their wits, immediately prepared for battle. I just let out a laugh, waving my hand and dismissing the spell. The massive tree, my Yggdrasil, started to wither. The sword and spear began to shrink. Their presence that weighed down upon everyone was receding with the fading of the world tree. Both my spear and my sword dropped to the ground, returned to their true forms, the sword of destruction and Gibalg. I retrieved them quickly enough and returned them to my ring. I cast one last gaze towards my tree, its entirety dissipating back into magical energy and dispersing back into the world. I'm kidding. I raised my hand up to show no hostility. I don't go back on my word. Once again, my pride would not allow it. Technically, we only agreed to allow me to bring that thing down, but it was the principle of the matter. How? Saber's master felt to his large, but pointing at me. How is that possible? That was a noble phantasm, and you destroyed it with magecraft. There shouldn't be any mysteries like that left in the world. That man was the only one to speak, but the expressions on the other mages there seemed to mirror his own. The horror on their faces, and the sheer bewilderment at what they saw. Well, his statement wasn't entirely accurate. The Queen of the Clock Tower has magecraft that's only a hair's breadth away from true magic. While she probably couldn't have done the same thing as my spell, a different set of circumstances, and she could have managed something similar. No, it wasn't just a spell. Siegfried spoke up. Quiet! I commanded you not to speak, unless I ordered it. His master snapped at him. Yeah, Siegfried, you don't want to give away any secretive information. I also spoke up. His master turned to me, mouth agape. But I'm curious at what you have to say, Dragon Slayer. I ignored his master. That was Gungnir, the spear of the All-Father. You somehow managed to create an image of it, one that possessed the same properties if diminished. Siegfried spoke, and his master seemed cowed by a few glares. And the sword? That's impossible in this age. The large master spat out. There had to be some other trick to it. Primordial runes. Siegfried closed his eyes, earning the undivided attention of everyone here. My lips curled up. You noticed, huh? I thought those were gone from the world. Archer muttered. You seem to have many things that should be impossible in this era, young man. Not impossible if you know where to look. I grinned. And I had the best teacher. Strange, I don't recall you being my student. Archer flashed a little smile, an obvious joking tone in his voice. I raised an eyebrow at him. You know, that really just revealed your identity. Archer just laughed. You focused solely on us servants when you had opportunities to kill a master. It's clear where you stand in this fight. I don't regret giving my identity, young warrior. He pushed his fist against his chest. I am Chiron, he said without any fanfare. Can I know the name of the one who was able to teach you? Surprisingly, the other servants didn't raise a fuss, even though they were on the same team. Though, the masters looked annoyed at him. Different mindsets beget different ideals and priorities, I suppose. Yeah, his identity made a lot of sense now. He had a little horse tail as well. No idea on his situation there, since he's supposed to be a centaur, but whatever. Clearly Greek with those kind of bow skills, and a tail like that. I probably would have guessed it eventually. The trainer of heroes, I guess I shouldn't be surprised he wanted to know about my teacher. Maybe his own pride as a teacher was poking through. He shrugged good-naturedly. It's as you say. The immortal which have done scathe. I answered, and it wasn't much of a secret. Besides, he appealed to my pride like that. How could I not answer in kind? There was a look of understanding that flashed across his face, accepting my answer. I'll look forward to seeing how well she taught you. Yeah, well, I don't look forward to those predictive arrows of yours. I grumbled. He laughed happily, and it was becoming difficult to dislike these servants. Master, are you planning to fight? Reiku asked. No. I propose a ceasefire, and I will honor it for the night. I shook my head. Then perhaps we should withdraw. Reiku questioned. We'll see how this plays out. I wanted to see how this went, and perhaps the smart thing to do would be to have my spell still going, except I was at my limit with it. I chose to dissipate it willingly instead of it fading by itself. Made my position seem stronger. And it wasn't fully as fleshed out as I had thought. Many things I need to tweak here, and they're like I initially thought. Truthfully, I was a bit exhausted after casting that thing. I wanted nothing more than to lay my head on her thighs and go to sleep. There was a woman holding a whip to the side of Darnik. She looked pensive, her eyes roaming all around me. Eastern on Myoji and even runecraft. She spoke up, clutching her whip tightly. You combined them somehow to form the basis of that spell, along with those primordial runes. She bit her lip. Interesting. Does the Igmillennia family study such things? That was a bit of a surprise. Both arts are looked down upon by the greater Magus community. I've never seen someone utilize runes like you did, she added, sidestepping my question. It was an impressive display. Darnik stepped forward, hushing his companion. Truly you are the Kaleidoscope's grandson. He praised. Ah, brown-nosing. How annoyingly familiar. Is this the part where you invite me to join you? I raised an eyebrow, earning a snicker from Mordred. Amusingly, Lancer, Vlad, looked annoyed at the thought. There's no need to fight. We don't wish to. I cut him off. Let's stop right there and clear up some misconceptions. I held my hand up. First, I'm not here on behest of the association to crush you or any other nonsense. I don't actually disapprove of your faction or your ideals on paper, and I can say with some certainty, neither does my grandfather. Then why are you? The Grail, obviously. I rolled my eyes. Why else would Tubby over there still be alive when I literally had him in the palms of my hands? I jerked my thumbs towards Saber's master. I simply did not like killing if I had no reason to do so. I'll fight their servants all day, though. Tubby! Saber's master shouted indignantly. Enough! This is getting nowhere. Vlad interjected, sighing and closing his eyes. I agreed to your terms before, and my word still stands. He didn't appear as though he was going to initiate a fight. Unless you want to extend them further? Well, he had a better temperament than his master. Siege the fortress? I asked, earning a note from him, but I merely shook my head. There's no point. I turned around to look at the sun, just peeking over the horizon. Vlad scowled but said nothing. He knew the rules and the abilities that ruler had to enforce them. Return, we're done for the night. He threw his hand to the side, commanding everyone. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted. Ryder held their hands behind their head, casually strolling by, not even concerned about what was going on. What a casual person. Still can't tell if they're a boy or girl. It's not that I cared either way, even if they wanted to identify as a neither or some other variation. I was just annoyed I couldn't figure it out. We're leaving. I looked towards Mordred and Reiku. Reiku was quiet, but she didn't speak to others unless she was forced to. Her attention was almost always on me. Mordred, though, she was oddly quiet. She wouldn't hesitate to throw words at anyone here if she felt like it, but she instead opted to stand by me, menacingly, and deter the others. Well, it would be rude to stay here any longer now that the sun was coming up. With a wave of my hand, I opened a portal and they followed me through. Master, Reiku immediately grabbed onto me, pushing me between her breasts. I was so worried. And you were so dashing. Mama is proud. You stupid cow, stop it. Mordred spat out. Fufufu. Reiku ignored Mordred. Master is going to be spoiled. Reiku. I patted her on the head. Mao. She pouted, but accepted me leaving her embrace. And my heartstrings are constantly tugged around her. That's seriously not fair. You going back to your master? I asked Mordred. That necromancer is fine, but I should go make sure. Mordred looked away, towards the direction I assume he was hiding in. That was impressive. She muttered, "Pardon." I blinked in confusion. She scowled, crossing her arms. "Your spell was cool," she huffed, taking down that noble phantasm and everything. "Is my son praising me?" I couldn't help but grin. "Fuck you," she spat out. "Someone's testy." I pursed my lips. "What's got you all twisted up? You're usually less contained than you are now from what I've seen so far. And you didn't even speak when we were at the castle. What's it to you?" She frowned. Fine, fine." I raised my free hand up. I wouldn't push her if she had something on her mind. "But you were great out there." "What?" She looked confused. "You did good." I praised her. "Taking on multiple servants, and even removing that berserker, you did an amazing job." "Oh, of course I did. Who the hell do you think I am?" She clearly preened under my words, even if she tried to appear nonchalant. "And don't you dare forget what I said." She raised her sword up, pointing at me. "I want some answers later, and you're going to give them to me," she declared before astralizing and disappearing. "Ha!" I let out a long breath. What a handful she is. I wonder how Artoria will react. I'll be sure to contact her in a few hours and get her opinion. In the meantime, I was exhausted and there was an empty lap for me to lay down on. I could think about the important bits after a couple hours of sleep. Definitely going to have a chat with Reiko later as well. Chapter 177. POV Assassin of Red, Semiramis. Foolish brutes. I hissed as I cast my healing spells over Ryder's body. Achilles, the man with a body that was impenetrable by anything not divine, had a gaping wound in his chest. "Stop hovering over me." I snapped at Archer, who would not cease her invasion of my space. I allowed them into this place, and even left my throne just to heal him, and they treat me like this? If not for Master, I would have tossed them out already. She frowned but took a step back. Even with my good mood, I was still annoyed having to deal with these idiots. Fastest hero. I scoffed. The wound was taking an annoying amount of time to heal. He was lucky that his spirit core was not overly damaged, otherwise this would have been fatal. It would have killed me if I wasn't fast enough. Achilles coughed up some blood, trying to laugh. "Quiet, your prattling makes it increasingly difficult to heal you." At least his passive defenses did not resist every type of power that it came in contact with, seemingly only hostile ones. But that just made it all the more concerning that he had a massive hole in his stomach. Dear me, what a terrible wound. Castor walked into my throne room. I had noticed his approach, but I was otherwise preoccupied keeping this idiot properly alive. "Castor," Archer growled, "speak your usual nonsense and I'll fill you with holes." "Well, one of them has a brain, I suppose." "Touchy, touchy." Castor seemed unperturbed at the threat. "Well, even cockroaches had methods for survival." "What happened?" he asked as he took out his notebook with quill in hand. I rolled my eyes at his words, but I was a little curious as well. Achilles' invincibility was something I had pondered how to deal with myself, but I don't think I could create a wound such as this. Ryder was about to speak, but I pressed on his chest, giving him a glare. "Make it worse and I'll stop my healing." He should be thankful I allow him this privilege. Archer let out a sigh. He fought Saber's master. She revealed. "Oh ho!" Castor perked up. This Wilhelm continues to impress. He began jotting down notes quickly. "I'm very curious about his story now. Do you still have those long-distance scrying spells active? If they will keep you quiet." I scowled, swiping my hand through the air, allowing the view to manifest in front of him. If watching those ants scramble around after we stole the Grail would keep him quiet, then by all means. "Continue speaking." I ushered towards Archer. She looked annoyed at my command, but complied all the same. My focus was drawn away from the fight many times due to interference, but I caught the important moments. She stated, "Saber of Black appears to be Siegfried the Dragon Slayer. The information is helpful, but why does that matter?" He called Wilhelm a dragon. Archer replied, "A dragon." I repeated her words in confusion. Preposterous. I scoffed. Dragons no longer exist in the greater world. There's no way for one to be walking around under the guise of a human. He had a gauntlet. It spoke and called itself Wydre Gotch. Archer continued, the name eliciting something similar to remembrance in my head. The Grail's work in giving me information, and my subconscious recalling it. It was able to increase his combat ability, and he somehow used it to pierce through Achilles' protections. I wanted to call her a liar, but looking down at this wound, I guess there was some kernel of truth in her statements. Some kind of device that has a remnant dragon's soul inside, or maybe some small piece of it to utilize. I muttered, maybe I can take a better look after taking it off his corpse. That wasn't all. Archer interrupted my musing. He had a noble phantasm, and what appeared to be a divine construct in the form of a staff, as it was capable of harming Achilles. What? I blurted out unintentionally. A dragon in a gauntlet I could possibly believe as something ridiculous but possible. A noble phantasm, and a divine construct being preserved into this era. Even if he was a magician or related to one, that was simply unthinkable. But this Archer servant wasn't one to spout lies or exaggerate truths. If it was Ryder, I could imagine him embellishing the tale to seem more impressive, but not this huntress. Ryder's breathing returned to normal, enough that I could withdraw my magecraft. That was the most I would do, even on Master's orders. Bastard was strong. He grunted, sitting up from his position as I stepped away. Had a lot of tricks, too. Things I've never seen before. Saber called him a dragon, but I don't even know if that's the truth. Forgive me for not trusting the insight of a servant who lost a battle to a living person. I drawled. At least I fought. Ryder countered. What did you do? Skulk around and steal the Grail under their noses while we had their attention. It's called being productive. We succeeded in securing victory, while you wallowed around in the mud with that pathetic master. I sneered. When I left, it was with him glaring up at me. When you left, it was he who was looking down on you. That's the difference between us. That's right. There was no point in this farce of a war any longer. We have the Grail, and Master devised a way to utilize the Grail and attain a wish without the required rules to be engaged. I assisted, of course, but with this, we had won. What did you say, witch? Ryder shot to his feet, regardless of his previous wounds. I could feel my poison come to the surface. Did I stutter? Or maybe he beat you a little too senseless, I'll show you a beating, that... He growled, spear materialized in his hand. You want to challenge me in my place of power? I couldn't help but laugh, snapping my fingers, magic circles filling the room. By all means, make a move. I go to the demigod. These foolish men, always so easy to rile up. Stop, both of you. Archer stepped between us. We're not here to fight each other. Looking down on him, huh? Castor spoke up for the first time in several minutes now. You think he might have held a grudge? What are you talking about? I barely gave him any attention. Oh, he does not look happy. Castor began to cackle. Let him stew in his anger. It was pleasing to know he was upset after I poisoned his little rodent. He deserved far worse for what he did to my master. Yeah, don't think he's stewing, unless that involves casting a giant tree over that castle. Castor looked much too interested for me to ignore him any longer. I quickly swiped my hand to bring the vision up before me. I was taken back by the massive tree that emerged from the castle, towering far above it and towards the heavens. That was not an ordinary tree. Danger. I quickly jumped to my throne, the mystic code that assisted in controlling the entirety of the gardens of Babylon. I began powering up the long-range offensive spells, targeting that overgrown shrubbery. I don't know what you're up to, but it's useless. Be reduced to ashes along with that faction. I commanded. Master didn't wish for any unnecessary bloodshed since we already acquired the Grail, but this situation called for action. For some reason, that tree gave me a foreboding feeling. The concentrated beams of ether and magical energy descended upon them like divine judgment. I paused when a golden light shot out, intercepting them, obliterating my magics that held them together into nothingness. And seeing, Castor snarked. In any other situation, I may have had the words to retort, but my attention was completely occupied by this magical phenomenon that was occurring below. I enhanced the visual scrying, focusing on the tree. It lit up in 9 patterns, and I realized what I was looking at. I slammed my hand on the armrest of my throne, actualizing all the defense capabilities of my noble phantasm. Shields by the dozen sprang up all around, even at the obscene cost to maintain them. It was clear he was doing something aimed at me, but it was useless. Let's see you break through my... Phlegm. What the hell? What's going on? The other servants shouted and panicked at the sudden attack. The garden shook, the sky dyed red, and a fiery hell burst through my gardens. Wonderful, wonderful! Castor began a mad cackle. The others braced themselves even as the gardens tilted and began falling from the sky. I pulled up a visual image of my gardens to see the damage. A good third of it had been entirely cut off and burned away. My hands trembled. Was it rage or something else? How could my noble phantasm possibly suffer this kind of damage at the hands of a mere boy? Magical propellants were deactivated, their sequences destroyed, and altitude was dropping quickly. Defenses were down, burned away at impact. Majority of offensive capabilities were destroyed as well. I grit my teeth, expending all the magical energy I could to make sure we didn't die in a fiery crash. POV Archer of Black. Chiron, Mentor of Heroes. Damn it! Lancer slammed his fists on the table, cracking the marble furnishing. We were made fools of. And to make matters worse, the grail was stolen from right under our noses. He snapped his head around the room. Darnick! What happened to our defenses? How strange. The relationship between those two had seemingly been reserved, and the master was being subservient to the servant. The bombs that erupted around the castle took our full attention to quench. There were lingering effects that persisted long after the initial shock. Most our defenses were brought down in the ensuing chaos. Darnick calmly explained. That damn brat did this. Gourds, Saber's master, grunted, a clear distaste for that young man on his face. Who cares if he's related to the Kaleidoscope? We should have dealt with him when we had the chance. As much as I'd like him begging under me. Ryder's master gripped her whip tightly, her hands straining against the leather. Did you forget what we just saw? I've never seen runecraft like that. And that's not even considering the apparent primordial runes he used. Her head snapped to Saber. You, servant. You said you know about them. Explain properly. Don't order my servant. Gord shouted. Then be a better master, you fat lard. She countered. Both of you, cease your childish bickering. Lancer slammed his fist down, conveniently forgetting his previous outburst. They were cowed immediately, despite their pride and their assumed status over their own servants. Angering one they did not hold a contract with was unwise. Saber. Lancer turned to Siegfried. A proper explanation, please. The sword user had been leaning against the back wall. He perked up after being addressed. I'm sorry, but I'm not a magus. He quickly apologized. I could recognize him as the type to do so under every circumstance, even if he was not at any fault. I never had such a problem with my own students. If anything, they were a bit too prideful and unwavering in their actions. A different perspective, then? Lancer added. Saber looked thoughtful for a moment before answering. It said that Lord Odin hung himself upon the world tree and gouged out one of his eyes as a sacrifice in a ritual to gain wisdom. This resulted in what's known as primordial runes, keys that interact with the rules of the world. Saber paused for a moment, allowing his words to sink in. If I'm not mistaken, he used them as a basis to bring about the world tree, Yggdrasil, which supported the existence of both Gungnir and Levitian from legends. It would be like calling upon Lord Zeus's thunderbolt. It wasn't the true legend, but it was a myth overcast on the catalysts he provided to structure the image. Everything was carefully thought out to bring the old age onto the modern world for a brief moment. Primordial runes were a powerful magic. They were similar to the divine words that were more prominent over in ancient Greece during my time. Written languages were not something very popular in the magical communities in my part of the world, so my knowledge was even more limited here. I'm a little glad my master was still in her room, away from this atmosphere, even if she is viewing everything through my eyes. I thought primordial runes were all gone. The only rumors I've heard about them have been broken, pieces popping up every now and then. Gord's clenched his fists. His teacher. I decided to speak up, drawing their attention. He said the immortal witch of Dunskaith was his teacher. That title was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Darnick, look at me. Scathack. I said plainly. How amusing that she raised the Irish Hercules, and I'm now facing another of her students. I guess one could say she was the Irish Chiron, or perhaps I'm the Greek Scathack. It was an amusing idea. It makes sense. Lancer spoke up. The Grail gave me her information, the basics at least. She was a master of runes, and a warrior queen who taught Siu Chulin of Ireland. Shouldn't she be dead? The age of gods ended. How did he learn from her? Ryder questioned, standing happily near his master. I think many couldn't tell his gender, but maybe my teaching days gave me some insight into the matter. The legends say she retreated from the world into the land of shadows. Nothing about her ever dying. I shook my head. It's probable he had gone there if he is related to the manipulator of parallel worlds. I couldn't claim to know what went into that magic, but it seemed to line up with what we know so far. Many strange things about him, from noble phantasms to divine weapons, and even a dragon. It was strange to see Achilles, another of my former students, suffer such a grievous wound at his hands. My hands itched looking at the young man, the desire to give him some instruction. Was I a bit envious of his teacher? I don't think I ever had a student who excelled in magecraft like this young man did. It would have been an interesting time teaching him properly if he lived during my era. Tisk! Gords clicked his tongue. Maybe if Assassin hadn't disappeared, we could have used them to kill the bastard. Unlikely, but not impossible. Still, having the assassin servant around would have been greatly appreciated. We're already missing our caster because he's holed up in his workshop for a project I'm not privy to. But I guess we have him to thank for the golems. Otherwise the Dragontooth warriors would have been an annoyance to deal with along with the servants. And what would Assassin have done about that spell? Ryder's master snapped. It took down that huge damn fortress in the sky. She was clearly still on edge after that ordeal. I couldn't blame her. Such blatant magical sights were not common these days. Is the division that researches on Myoji still around? I want to ask them some questions. Darnik shook his head. They were sent away along with the others for the duration of the war. Archer, Lancer's voice resounded throughout the room. You lived during the Age of Gods and had interacted with Greek pantheon. Yes, I was familiar with various gods during my years. I was taught my skills by both Lady Artemis and Lord Apollo when I was younger and had spoken with several other gods throughout my long years. That spell, Lancer said quietly. What are your thoughts? I see. Even the king of this land was shaken by the display. I believe even Hecate would have nothing but praise for that display. I was honest with my words. If I was his teacher, I would have been proud of him for something like that. To use the Norse's entire cosmology into a singular spell with multiple branching possibilities, it was impressive. But there was a fatal flaw. The casting time. Lancer tapped his finger on the cracked table. Indeed. I nodded, though I felt that such a problem would be rectified in the future by the young man, just not in this war. I don't believe we need to worry about such a thing being turned against us unless we give him time to prepare. So nothing changed. Gords huffed. All he has to do is cast it as soon as the sun goes down and aim at us from wherever he's hiding. We're sitting ducks. He already revealed he would not take that course of action. I held back a sigh. Gords was the type of person I disliked dealing with the most. Quick to anger, quick to lose their patience, and quick to become helpless in the face of adversary. If he wished to do something like that, you would have been dead, as he had pointed out in our talk. Gords pursed his lips as if he wanted to retort, only to mumble under his breath and back down. This Wilhelm had his own pride, and I doubt he would step on it himself. We need a better plan of attack, Lancer said, his voice not loud but carried over the room. He has another servant allied with him, meaning they have 3 individuals capable of fighting us head-on. Yet, even with our numbers advantage, we can't deny we lost this night. Is he going to be our focus? I asked. No. Lancer shook his head. Retrieving the Grail takes priority. They took it for a clear reason. It's as the boy said. They could potentially use it for something, or maybe bypass the restrictions somehow. He turned to look at Darnik. Darnik, in your opinion, how long would it take to crack the defenses and restrictions on the Grail in their shoes? He blinked at that questions, looking deep in thought before answering. 3 days, possibly less. But it's merely theory, even after having examined it myself for many years. We simply did not have the ability knowledge to safely do so, but a caster-class servant utilizing resources like that flying fortress. Good! Lancer looked pleased at Darnik's expertise. Then we'll be the ones attacking this coming night. The roles have been reversed. I'll fight him, Saber spoke up, standing up straight. Wilhelm, I will bet myself against him. Are you confident? Lancer stared at the dragon slayer. No, I cannot give my guarantee of victory. He is not like the evil dragon I slayed in my life. And my instincts are telling me that the dragon within him would easily trample Fafnir, but it's something I must know, something I wish to do. He looked steadfast in his decision, a look in his eyes that mirrored the resolve within him. I'll leave him to you then. I couldn't help but smile. Saber was someone who I would gladly fight shoulder to shoulder with. Gord scowled at his servant's decision. You barely held your own with help, and now you want to fight him yourself. I will be utilizing my noble phantasm to its utmost this time. Saber tried to reassure his master. It was perhaps a fatal flaw in our battle strategy the previous night. We were all too grouped together. It was unlikely that Saber could safely utilize his noble phantasm without harming another of our number. Wilhelm certainly made use of our proximity to his advantage. And despite my ability to exploit their openings, I was still hindered to some degree by my teammates being within reach of my targets. Lancer leaned, back in his seat, once again surveying the room. We suffered a defeat, but this war has not ended. It's time to plan our next attack. Well, I can't say Lancer is a bad leader. Wilhelm POV. I took Reika back to our little hideout, my bounded field still active. I yawned, and almost immediately I was enveloped by Reiku again. I'm exhausted. I let out a tired breath. It was an impressive spell, Master. She praised. Well, it's what they get for hurting Sir Wiggles. I harumphed, allowing myself to fall into her embrace. Sir Wiggles was resting in his little spot inside my hat right now, but he should be fine. How are you? I looked up into her eyes. I'm fine, Master. She gave a bright smile, but something fell off. Reiku! I poked her. What happened with the Lancer you fought? Reiku paused. I will deal with him the next we meet, she stated. I looked into her eyes, and she looked away, not wanting to meet my gaze. I pursed my lips and poked her side, and she still didn't give in. Reiku, we're a team. She made a little noise, but still didn't answer. If you tell me you want to fight him, I won't tell you no. But you need to be honest with me. Karna, she said quietly. He is Karna, the Indian hero. Oh, I replied plainly, until the truth finally set in. And you're the daughter of Gozu Tennu, who is Indra. It started to make sense now. Heroic spirits were more than just human or mortals. They were their legends. That meant she was being affected by her half-brother's link with Karna due to sharing Indra as a father, being intertwined in the same sphere of influence. Was it another reenactment of legend? Concepts so similar that certain outcomes were inevitable. If they were both living people, not heroic spirits, this situation wouldn't have occurred. But there was a force basically telling them to fight, deep within their cores. Regardless, I would not allow Reiku to die. I've enjoyed her presence, and I want her to stay by my side even after the war is over. We can make plans later. I let out another yawn. That spell took a lot out of me, more than I realized at the time, and was probably hopped up on the adrenaline. So many things to do, plans to make, notes to take. Rest your head on Mama's lap. She beamed, patting her thighs. I'll call Artoria in a few hours after a nap and meet up with Mordred at some point during the day. But for now, I would enjoy my servant's lap pillow. Chapter 178. I was practicing the breathing technique that Jin had taught me, my aura flowing in and out gently, just barely off from filling up to the peak. I let out a final breath as I opened my eyes. I was still a bit fatigued, but that should go away by the time I needed to fight again. Hey, Drake. I let myself fall back into my bed, staring up at the ceiling. We haven't had a chance to talk in a bit. That's true. You've been busy, Drake replied. Achilles, Vlad, Karna, Siegfried, Chiron, Mordred, Reiku. Quite the lineup of powerful foes here. I let out a snort. Not all of them are enemies. Oh yes, your mommy and your son. Drake taunted. Bite me. I rolled my eyes. I'm sure if you ask your servant, she'd be into you. Funny. I turned my head, looking out the window. However, I don't want to take advantage of her mental state. You humans. I practically felt Drake roll his eyes. Just take her. She wouldn't say no. Can we not right now? Fine. Drake grumbled. You did good last night. You've come pretty far from the brat that had trouble with a single undead. That felt like a lifetime ago. And every time I thought about it, I continued to miss my cane sword. I really do need to look into getting another. It was neat to finally see that spell as well. I know you've been thinking about it for some time, but to actually see it in action was spectacular. Drake gave some rare praise, even if there were some issues with it. Yeah, it was a bit forced, for lack of a better word. I need to fix some of the runic sequences for a smoother casting. I also didn't take into account certain variables in my haste, like the time of day. Making the world tree bloom at night, that made it harder than it should have been. Not to mention using both Muspelheim and Asgard together, they kind of grated due to the hostile concepts of their origins. Not to mention I had trouble supporting just 2 of the 9 realms at once. I guess it's to be expected. I was bearing the weight of the entire Norse cosmology for that moment of casting. I would get better at it as I practiced some more. A bit excited to see it all in action. But you're still missing a few pieces to bring out the full power of everything. Yeah, Gibolg is probably the perfect catalyst for Asgard, and the Sword of Destruction is adequate for Muspelheim. But I'm missing the right vessels for the others. I sighed, thinking about my growing collection. While there were some stuff that might fit, it was barely better than casting without a vessel for the myths to descend into. Well, mostly anyways. My Staff of Magnus fit into one very well, but it was also used to help facilitate the entire casting, so I didn't want to sacrifice it to a single realm. I could cast the spell fine without any ancillary means, otherwise that would just be a huge design flaw on my part. But adding things to bolster each realm means they can bring about more weight to each part. My spell. This was a spell I created, not Zelretch. Mine. And it was magnificent. You need to work on your lightning spells too. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I nodded at his words. They were more spur-of-the-moment kind of things, but it just went to show how much work I still have to do. Always something on my plate. The power was fairly decent for the equivalence in casting ease. Not to mention the range and area of effect. Well, you won't be taking out any servants with that lightning rain or lightning arrow you thought up on the spot, but they might lead into something stronger in the future. That's a very good point. I rubbed my chin. I'll check the old man's library for any ideas. Hell, I'm sure there's stuff over at the College of Winterhold that I still haven't even considered yet. Jin can definitely help me there. How do you feel about the Dragon Slayer? Siegfried, huh? My thoughts drifted to him. Well, the real Siegfried, anyways. I let out a chuckle. But I don't think I can get out of fighting him. Not that I would want to. We'll probably settle things tonight along with the remainder of this war. Any plans on how you're going to approach this? At this point, both sides are going to be gunning for you, and your tricks were revealed for the most part. Well, my plan didn't really come through last night. Admittedly, it wasn't that complicated of a plan. Distract everyone, blow up fortress, Sir Wiggle's scouts. I steal Grail when found. The red faction beat me to it. This time, fuck it. We're going in from the front. No tricks, no schemes. We'll fight them all. Well said. Drake seemed pleased. Make them pay for hurting our rabbit. Our rabbit? I raised an eyebrow. He grew on me. Drake grumbled. We need to get him stronger, so that doesn't happen again. Huh. I let out another long breath. I should probably stop procrastinating. That little dragon deserves to know. Drake agreed. Out of all your women, I think she's my favorite. You're just saying that because she has your dragon core inside her. I deadpanned. Hee hee. Regardless, I should stop putting this off. I looked out the window. The sun was shining on the town spread out below. After we got back to our hideout, I realized the red faction wouldn't be in the town anymore, so I brought us back here and rented a room. No reason to rough it when we don't have to. And I managed to convince Reika to take a bit of time to herself, relax in a nice warm bath. I felt bad about manipulating her like that, but I didn't want her to be here when I called Artoria. Even the mention of anyone I was involved with kind of put her in a mood. I don't know how she would react to actually seeing my girlfriend. With a flick of my hand, I held the kaleidophone between my fingers. It was a bit amateurish, even as I continued to look at it, but I had nothing but praise for Rin in creating this thing. She's still walking around with training wheels with regards to using the kaleidoscope. Being able to create something like this just exhibited her natural talent. All right, stop procrastinating. It wasn't difficult to connect to Artoria's. It was very similar to calling another phone. I felt the faint fluctuations of the kaleidoscope being manipulated, pulling on my own magical energy to facilitate the process. The device flashed a few times before an image came into view. Wilhelm. Artoria appeared on the screen, her voice coming in clear. Hey there. I couldn't help but smile at seeing her face. It was hard to resist the urge to jump over to her and wrap her up. Are you okay? She sounded concerned. I am prepared for battle if you require assistance. I'm fine, really. I reassured her. But it was nice how quickly she was willing to jump in if I was having a difficult time. I just wanted to talk to you about a few things. A social call. She tilted her head, her bright smile appearing. I'm glad you are not troubled then. If you wouldn't mind, I would like to hear about how the war is going. Well, good, I guess. I don't think it will last past this next night. I replied. Have you figured out the other servants' identities? She inquired. Some heavy hitters here. Achilles, Karna, Siegfried, to name a few. She blinked. Are you sure you do not require assistance? I am aware of those names, and they only fill me with unease. It's fine. I've already faced them all at some point. Besides, my servant is a monster herself. Herself? Artoria raised an eyebrow. Something you wish to tell me? It's complicated. She pursed her lips. I expected you to just outright admit to it. I suppose there is something wrong if you are hesitating. You are usually very upfront about these sorts of things. She's a berserker. Her madness enhancement is not the traditional kind. I said simply, I don't wish to elaborate due to personal things on her end. I see. Then I will not ask further. But I suppose I owe Jin 20 septims now. Did you bet on me? I was a bit taken back. She actually let out a small giggle. We all made a small wager on the outcome. Jin was adamant that your servant would be a woman. I thought the odds would be in my favor for you to summon a man. Well, I scratched my head. She kinda is the same as you in that regard. Artoria blinked again. Oh, is that so? I will further look forward to meeting her then. You're so sure I'm bringing her back with me? Yes. You're lucky you're not within my reach right now. I pursed my lips. I fear my rear would not leave unmolested if you were in my presence. She gave a little smile, her face faintly dusted pink. Mayhaps I should give you an incentive to return without any problems? Careful there, I may just take you up on that. I smirked. She didn't reply. Instead, it looked like she set the phone down, and I heard her moving around for a few moments, unable to actually see her. The visuals flashed all over the place before they settled back on Artoria, her holding the phone up to her face again. This time, she was sporting a bright red complexion, and she held her hand up for me to see, a pair of panties dangling there. I raised an eyebrow. Someone's being bold, and consider me incentivized. It's great how much she's opened up since we started our relationship. Maybe this method of communication was also giving her some confidence to be a bit more forward, since I wasn't immediately there. Are you ready to speak about the true reason you called me then? Her demeanor shifted, catching me off guard. Am I that easy to read? I let out a sigh, running a hand down my face. I'm not a fool, Wilhelm. I can tell when you're holding something back. She gave a gentle smile. If I had to guess, it's something to do with me. Perhaps someone from my past was summoned. Saber of Red is Mordred. I decided to just rip the Band-Aid off. She paused. Her expression stiffened. I see. She managed to eke out. Has Mordred caused any issues? The opposite, actually. She's been a great help, and I've been working with her and her master. Fuck, the look she had on her face. I wanted to jump over and hug her this instant. I admit, this possibility was something I considered, but to actually hear it has brought up feelings within me I thought I had long since buried. I could see her kind of shrink back, like she was unsure of herself. It reminded me of when we first met, and she was still very self-conscious about everything. I am unsure of what to say, Wilhelm. She said quietly, Do you hate her? We might as well start from the beginning. Hate! She repeated the word to herself. I do not think I can bring myself to hate my son. I am aware of the many failures I conducted during my life, Mordred's situation being among them. I have had time to consider all my mistakes, and I realized that I had been the cause of many of them. She clutched her chest. I feel an anger inside of me, when I recall her wielding Clarin against me when she incited a rebellion to overthrow me. But most of all, it is almost completely overshadowed by regret. Would you like to meet her again, once this war is done? Does he not despise me? She muttered. Mordred worships the ground you step on. When I accidentally blurted out your name when I first saw her, she got super defensive of you. Not to mention when I said you were my girlfriend. She was ready to take my head at the perceived insult. She let out a depreciating laugh. That reckless boy. He always acted without thought, charging in like a berserker in the midst of battle. She shook her head. Do you know her wish? No, don't tell me. I don't believe I deserve to know. It's a good wish. I think you would approve of it. If Mordred wishes it. And it would not be too much trouble. Mayhaps there is a chance for me to apologize for all the wrongs I've done to him. Artoria, I would help you no matter what. You silly girl, do you really think I would deny my help in this situation? I plan on talking to her later today, so I can bring it up. She did perk up at my words. Is there anything in particular you want me to say? Yes. Artoria looked firm all of a sudden. I will await for him to return, victorious from this battle. I could imagine that she was hesitant to say anything too personal or any kind of apology. But I think Mordred would be ecstatic to know that Artoria was waiting and believed in her victory. How about I tell you everything in more depth? Yes, please start from the beginning. She nodded. Chapter 179. I sent the kaleidophone into my ring and looked out the window at the streets below. I felt much better after talking with Artoria for a bit, and it seemed like she was feeling better by the end as well. It's good I have her blessing with regards to Mordred. I certainly didn't want to try and build some bridges if Artoria didn't want Mordred in her life. No idea what's going to happen on that front, but I hope they can maybe find some closure. Still though, what a mess this is. Trying to bring together two people who probably have very little idea how to have a relationship between a parent and a child. I have no idea if they'll hug or start punching each other the first time they meet. I was betting on the latter. Master, Reka's cheerful voice filled the room as she walked out of the bathroom. Would you like a turn? It was very nice. Running hot water is quite a wonderful invention of this era. Do you want Mommy to wash your back? Well, Reka's happy mood was very contagious. Well, I wouldn't mind. I paused, staring at Reiku, who stood at the threshold, wearing nothing but a small towel that left nothing to the imagination. Fufu, Reika looked at me with a smile. Was she intentionally showing off her legs? Master, don't stare at your mother so intently, she said, but I had the faintest inclination that she was being facetious. This woman was going to be the death of me. Mad enhancement, I just felt guilt thinking that way while she wasn't in her right mind. Well, I should probably change the subject. Reiku, want to go for a walk before we meet up with Mordred? She scowled for a brief moment at the mention of Saber, but quickly recovered into a bright smile. I would love to, she happily replied. She turned away to fetch some clothes. No peeking. She winked towards me before going back into the bathroom. Oh well, she at least has some sense of propriety under these circumstances. I would definitely deal with that mental pollution she is going on. I wanted her to be happy after this was all said and done. I haven't slept much these past couple days, but from what I've seen in the dream cycle, her life was not what one would call happy. Forced to be a man due to her clan's traditions, it grated on her in ways that was hard for me to fathom. She found her outlets, but it led to her developing an odd sense of affection. Waiting in this moment, I mentally check on Sir Wiggles. He was sleeping soundly inside my little hat space, seemingly content to laze about there when he wanted some peace and quiet. Good. I was a bit worried he'd be more skittish after what happened. I'm ready. Reika walked out again, wearing the clothes she picked out when we went shopping last. You look lovely, I complimented, even with her figure on full display. You're such a sweet boy. She beamed, linking her arm in mine as we got up to walk out the door. It's nice out, almost enough to forget that we're in a war. I mused, walking down the street with Reiku. I couldn't claim to be familiar with Romania, not a place I spent much time in either life, but it looked more of the same. It's interesting, she replied, seeing the common folk without any worry about them. There is not threat to their existence, no monster that lurk around the corner. During my life, both the richest and the poorest were almost always on constant guard from ghosts, demons, or yokai. Was it really that bad back then? I questioned. She nodded. Kyoto was covered in a miasmic depression that continued to give birth to more of the creatures. More incidents just increased the negative emotions and perceptions of the human population, which in turn continued to fuel their creation. Yokai were generally created through human imagination, mostly from their negative thoughts and feelings. That didn't mean they couldn't become something more, though. Were all yokai evil? I was curious about her thoughts. Her story is known to some degree, and some things I saw from the dream sequence, and her legendary battle with a certain Oni I won't mention in her presence. I honestly wanted to know if she was the type that couldn't coexistence with them. Not at all. She said simply, I was acquainted with many yokai who would peacefully live amongst humans. But there were also those who wished nothing more than to exist as monsters. Her face darkened for a brief moment. This wasn't the world I was born in, I stated, which earned an abrupt glance from her. I told you I can travel to other worlds. You did. Was your home different? She tilted her head cutely. Calling that place my home, it made me unconsciously purse my lips. The age of gods never ended. I believe I mentioned this as well. She nodded, so I continued. The yokai of Kyoto created a separate dimension over the human cities to house their own. They separated themselves from humans willingly. She looked a bit surprised. Yup. I smiled. There are even humans living among them in the separate dimension. Granted, anyone can come and go, but even still. It's a fun and lively place, all types walking around at any given moment. Is this the place you intend to take me? She asked. I plan on taking you whenever you want. I shot her a grin. Master, she brightened up, but it looked like she was still curious. This Kyoto of another world, you brought it up because you want me to go with you, yes? I thought it would be something both familiar and new enough to be something you'd enjoy. Rin told me some stories on how she had to integrate Artoria into modern society because the Grail was not quite as thorough as she was led to believe in imparting knowledge. Thought I'd get a head start on that with some planning. I'm willing to follow you anywhere, Master. She smiled. Well, I wanted to gauge her reaction. You'll be able to meet my daughter. Daughter. She sputtered in surprise. My cute little daughter. I laughed at the expression she was making. It wasn't that angry look I half expected, but some kind of bewilderment. She's a yokai, a little fox you might say. But, Master. She grabbed me tight. I'm not prepared to be a grandmother. Cute. I couldn't help but pat her head. My Kunu would adore you. I reassured her. Obviously it would be after removing her madness. Want to see a picture? I whispered. She bit her lip, but nodded her head. I quickly took out my phone and swiped to the pictures of her. A nine-tailed fox. Reika blurted out, surprised once again. Master, those are calamities. She looked at me with worry in her eyes. Really, you want to tell me this is a calamity? I asked as we swiped through pictures of Kunu just being her cute little self. Besides, her mom is a Miko for Amaterasu and rules over half the yokai in Japan. If anything, they're keeping everything safe. Reika just made a confused Reika sound. Want to hear about the time I went to Yomi? Master, Reiku whined. I'm going to faint if you keep this up. Teasing Reiku was more fun than I thought. In all seriousness, I'm actually friends with Izanami no Makoto. Her mouth hung open, gaping at me. Master, I forbid you from seeing her again. Her voice became a tone higher. Why you are not to associate with Japan's death goddess? She wagged her finger like she was scolding me. I could imagine the misconceptions she has about my Izzy as opposed to the legends of the one here. Oh, look, it's Mordred. I pulled on her arm, feigning ignorance. Master! She pouted, but allowed me to pull her all the same. I actually did see Mordred a bit away. I figured it was time to get our little chat out of the way. I'm sure there was a lot that needed to be said, and I wanted to pass on Artoria's words. Chapter 180. I gave Reiku a little hip bump as we walked down the street. She shot me a little smile, poking me with a cute little laugh. It really did brighten up my mood when she was happy. The area around her seemed to brighten at her upbeat demeanor. That should be them at the end of a street. I nudged her again to gain her attention, jerking my head towards that direction. She pursed her lips, looking over there. From the outside, It didn't look like anyone was there, but the faint fluctuations of magical energy were hard to miss to those who could sense such things. A few bounded fields layered upon one another. If I had to guess, mostly to keep people out or stall for time if the worst happened. Master, Reka pouted a little. Do we need to meet with them again? She latched onto my arm. Wouldn't you rather spend the day with your mother? That smoldering look in her eyes did make me hesitate, but I did need to speak with Mordred. I couldn't help but put my hand on her head. I promise we'll be able to spend lots of time together after. Mama will hold you to that. She beamed happily, but there was still a faint sense of depression in her tone. I held back a sigh. It just keeps making me feel bad that she's like this. I can see the person underneath, but her mad enhancement is doing gods know what to her mind. It was frustrating. I just shook my head in resignation. I kept telling myself this to settle my own conscience, but I'll definitely help her once we're done. Approaching the bounded field, there were no surprises, and it was obvious they were expecting us. I just did the magical equivalent of knocking on it to let us in without disrupting the spells. The part immediately in front of us pulsed, as if inviting us in. Well, no need to refuse a polite invitation. Reka didn't speak, but followed me inside. We were greeted by the sight of both Kyrie and Mordred sitting at the table of a little cafe, completely devoid of people. Well, not completely devoid, there appeared to be a barista inside and a server who was sitting down due to the lack of customers. Kyrie gave a little gesture of greeting, and I noticed his lack of sunglasses, even though it was very bright outside compared to the last time we met during the night. It wasn't very important, but I was nonetheless a bit curious. Mordred looked at me strangely, and I raised an eyebrow as she almost mechanically played with a cat in her arms. And she was sporting some modern-day clothes. I wanted to comment on how cute it was, but I was going to try and keep the teasing to a minimum for now. She didn't immediately react with any kind of disgust or annoyance when seeing me, so I thought that was progress. Impressive bounded field. I decided to speak first. You couldn't even tell there was a cafe from the outside. Using the idea of a mirage over the standard illusion would probably throw most magi for a loop the first time they saw it. Something I picked up doing a job in Egypt, he said nonchalantly, and gestured towards the open seats across from him and Mordred. Nice little spot you found. I decided to be a gentleman and pulled out Reka's chair for her. The smile she gave could melt ice. I joined her quickly enough, taking a glance all over. 3 escape routes, backs to the wall. I tapped the table, pulsing a little bit of magical energy. Oh, an interesting method of reinforcement, and perfect to use as a quick shield. He didn't seem at all nonplussed by my discoveries. You can never be too careful, he said simply. With all the things going on these days, a bit of paranoia is healthy. He reached into his leather jacket, pulling out a newspaper and tossing it onto the table. The look he gave me basically said to give it a glance. I mentally shrugged, picked it up and read the title. I furrowed my brow as I processed it for a moment. The Return of Jack the Ripper. I repeated the heading out loud, setting it down, and tapped on the table in thought. You must have some certainty if you're showing me this. You don't seem the type to make assumptions. I was contacted by my employers at the Mages Association. A priest in Bucharest reported it up the chain, and since there was a Grail war going on nearby. Damn it! I pulled my hand down my face. I haven't met either of the assassins yet. I let out a sigh. Too many coincidences then. Bucharest is the capital of Romania if I'm not mistaken, and it shouldn't be too far away. Well, I could get close enough with a portal by eyeballing it regardless. Yeah, even Kyrie let out a sigh. The higher-ups told me to take care of it. It's drawing too much unwanted attention. What horrible timing. I pursed my lips. I doubt the war will still be going by noon tomorrow. Kyrie didn't reply, but gave a what-can-you-do gesture. Ruler's probably aware, too. I grunted in annoyance. If we don't deal with it, it's entirely possible she puts the war on hold until it's dealt with. Rulers had that kind of authority with command seals to back it up. I had no doubt her skills included some kind of revelation or clairvoyance that would alert her to disruptions to the war. Who knows if the real Big G was sending her missives, or the counterforce was acting through her in some capacity. Either way, we had a pretty damn good reason to nip this in the bud. I'm surprised you're bringing this to me. Are you asking me for help? I questioned. He seemed like the kind of person to not like working with others if he had the choice. I feel like I'm getting an abrupt influx of trust here. Enforcers and mercenaries in our world had an interesting relationship with one another. You have the camaraderie that comes with a job, and the absolute distrust that comes with being a magus. Eventually you learn who the people you work with are, who you know to have your back, who you know will try to stab you in the back if they get the chance. Freelancers, like Kyrie, do not like working with people they're unfamiliar with. Better the devil you know. Heh. I checked with my contacts at the clock tower. He grunted. Verifying your story. Wait, how did you check? The only way would be through Gramps. Imagine my surprise when one of my contacts messages me saying the wizard Marshall paid him a little visit. Kyrie snorted. Whether in amusement or exasperation, I had no idea. So you trust me now? I trust who you are at least. That's fair. Yeah, trust was a commodity that was hard to come by in this hidden world. I was kind of an outlier here where I seemed to gather people around me that I would trust nearly unconditionally. I guess it doesn't hurt that I can take us there and back in a snap of my fingers. Yeah, Magus shit. Mordred finally seemed to get bored with our conversation. You gonna help or not? She said directly, making Kyrie sigh. Well, if you're asking. I shot her a smile. Honestly, I would have needed to deal with this either way. Never understood all that back and forth crap. Just spit it out and get it over with. Mordred scowled. I guess that's one way to settle it. Do you want to head out immediately, or... I'm going to get a drink. Kyrie suddenly stood up and didn't even turn around as he walked into the cafe. I just blinked, watching him leave. Well, I guess that just happened. I turned to look at Mordred, who seemed a little hesitant. She was hugging the cat tightly, which it apparently didn't mind. Reika still hasn't spoken, which I figured at this point she simply does not like talking to anyone but me unless she had to. You look good. I wanted to try and compliment her on her choice of dress. She wore some jean shorts, a white tube top, and a red jacket over top. Not the most conservative clothing I've ever seen, but if she likes it, then who am I to say anything? I think she smiled a little, but forced to back down. The clothing in this era is nice. Not even nobility had clothes this comfortable. I can even wear it under my armor and it's easy to move around in. There was a hint of excitement in her voice that was just kind of adorable. Though it didn't last long, she sort of withdrew back into herself. Very odd to see the boisterous girl this reserved. Well, lay it on me. I offered her an opening. I did promise to talk with her about whatever she wanted. She visibly perked up, and it was a little amusing how this brash person was being so conservative with her obvious desires at the moment. Father, where is he? Mordred finally asked. I wanted to tease her, but I knew now would be an inappropriate time. She's in another world at the moment. She's running around with Rin, her master and friend, while they do whatever it is she's wanting to do for her studies. Another world, Mordred mumbled. So I wouldn't be able to meet him even if I won. Says who? I commented, breaking her from her thoughts. I'm here, aren't I? I can take you there if that's what you want. She frowned. And what do you want in return? She looked a bit serious. I think her only examples of magi were her mother, Merlin, and now Kyrie, all of which no doubt emphasized the benefits out of every interaction. Do you plan on attacking her when you meet? I asked. Mordred scoffed. I'm not going to go berserk. There was a joke to be made there, but I held back. Then I don't mind taking you anywhere you want. I tried my best to reassure her. If you want a new start somewhere, I know plenty of places you could thrive. If you wanted to go meet Artoria, would Father even wish to see me? Mordred said quietly, bringing the cat up to sort of hide her face. I rebelled and killed him. I ended his perfect kingdom and his legacy. It was funny in a sad way how they both said the same thing. I spoke with Artoria earlier. I replied. She looked at me intently again. I explained everything that was going on and all the servants who were summoned. So Father knows I'm here then? It was a rhetorical question on her part. Did he tell you to stay away? Nothing of the sort. I denied. She was interested in how you've been doing. And at the end, she asked me to pass on a message. A message from Father? Mordred didn't really seem to know how to react to that. It was something along the lines of, if you desire, I'll be waiting for you after you win. I smiled. Mordred looked, surprised at the message. Father really said that? There was a trembling in her voice. Father doesn't despise me. He actually wants to see me and believes I'll win. Fucking hell. What had Mordred been through that those few words would elicit such a reaction? We got a few more minutes to kill. Want to hear some stories about Artoria in the meantime? I offered. Father's exploits. Mordred seemed quick to calm down, back to her usual haughtiness. Sure, I guess. She tried her best to sound uninterested, but the way her eyes sparkled gave away her true feelings. It was hard to resist the urge to pat her head. Non-canon omake. Wilhelm attorney at law in round 2 part 2. The judge slammed his gavel down, quieting the courtroom. This court is now in session. There was a lot of build-up between when I first came and now, but I wasn't really paying attention. I'm sure it wasn't anything important. I took out my phone and started going through my pictures. Hey! Loki whispered, elbowing me. What? Pay attention, he hissed. Yeah. I ignored him, still scrolling through some pictures to pass the time. Hey! He hissed again, elbowing me a little harder. Wanna see? I grinned. What in the 9 realms is so damn interesting that you're ignoring my trial? He whispered with a little bit of venom in his voice. I tilt my phone over for him to see. He rolled his eyes. How uncouth, he said dryly. Yes, it's a naked woman. Very humorous. From last night. I smirked. Do you want a trophy? He scoffed, glancing down again. Though, she does look familiar. Do you have one of her face? Nah, just a few shots like this. Or if you want to see something more intimate. Absolutely not. He scowled. Mr. Schweinord? The judge's voice overtook the room. Are we boring you? I cleared my throat, putting my phone away. No, Your Honor. Then why do you have your phone out in my courtroom? He raised an eyebrow. Well, Your Honor. I straightened my tie. I'm already having to work from scraps here to build a defense. I needed some access to the internet. You wouldn't want this case to be retried because of my incompetence, right? He narrowed his eyes. And how exactly was this helping your case? He raised his gavel up towards me. It involved Loki's mom. I replied without hesitation. What? Loki stood up, slamming his hands on the table. Loki Odinson, sit down. The judge yelled as all the guards raised their weapons. There was a fury in his eyes, and I couldn't for the life of me place it. But he sat down all the same, promising death with his glare. I wonder who he hates so much. I will tentatively allow this, Mr. Schweinord. The judge grunted. Do not abuse this privilege. Any other time, I would have you in contempt for such a thing. I'm going to kill you. His whispered words like knives into my ear. Someone got up on the wrong side of the bed. I hummed. You know who also? One more word. Loki interrupted. One more, I dare you. I don't like being threatened. Your Honor, I would like to call Loki Odinson to the stand. I stood up, pointing at my client. What? Loki blinked. I wasn't prepared for this. Aren't we supposed to have a back and forth about what questions you're asking? You'll do fine, I promise. I pat him on the shoulder with a smile. I am not filled with confidence. He drawled. That's strange. I'm usually a pretty good liar. I appeared thoughtful. He started walking towards the stand and stopped. Wait, what? Go! I shoot him forward. Loki growled but still moved towards the witness chair. Loki Odinson, the judge asked as he placed his hand on a Bible, which was odd to ask a Norse god to do. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the whole truth, so help you God? I swear to tell the truth in my name, yes. He said dryly. The judge let out a sigh. That's fine. The defense may proceed. I happily jumped to my feet. Loki Odinson. I grinned, looking at him. Is it true you once? I did not have intercourse with a horse. He slammed his fist on the bench, cracking it. The courtroom got silent. What? The judge questioned. Can we ignore that very strange outburst from my client? I asked. Proceed. The judge rubbed the bridge of his nose. And Mr. Odinson, no more outbursts like that. As I was saying, I clapped my hands. Loki Odinson, is it true you once coveted the throne of Asgard? Of course, Loki said without hesitation. It is mine by right. His eyes darted towards Thor, who watched from the corner. And I would have been a much better king than my oaf of a brother. Interesting. I nodded my head. Then why come to Earth? Is there something here you wanted? Loki visibly scoffed. Of course not. What would a god like me want from this ball of dirt? So these. I swept my hand around the room. Humans are beneath you. You didn't intend on conquering Earth to build up an army and take Asgard. You mortals trying to siege Asgard? Loki actually laughed. I guess meat shields would be beneficial to any army I roused. The people in the courtroom got angry. Even the jury looked rather put off by his statements. I glanced at the prosecution, who seemed just baffled at my line of questioning. I straightened my tie again. He was trying to play chess while I was over here playing Mario Party. And everyone knows that Mario Party is complete and utter bullshit. So if I'm getting this straight, you attacked Earth for the hell of it. I am a god. Stepping on ants is not something I do for fun, just a hazard of my existence. He turned up his nose. Aha! I nodded. And why did you come to Earth? Pardon? Loki Odinson. Why did you come to Earth in the first place? He looked blank for a moment. I do not need to reveal my intentions to this group of primates. I will not be judged by you mortals. Again, everyone turned to him with complete contempt. Wonderful, I replied. One final question. I withdrew a rolled-up piece of parchment from my pocket, unfolding it for everyone to see. This is a picture of a oar. A dagger flew by my face, stabbing through the parchment and impaling it on the nearby wall, followed by a handful of similar-looking daggers. There was silence again. Brother! A hammer came flying through the air and smacked Loki in the face. And all hell broke loose. Order! The judge slammed his gavel down several times. I will have order in my court. Everyone began to settle down. That was a stupid move, Loki. I shook my head. All my work may have just been for naught. But I can't believe how thoroughly they checked you for any more concealed weapons. I mean, I know I suggested a full body cavity search, but I didn't expect them to go through with it. MMMPPFH, Loki wiggled around in his restraints, mouth gagged, a fire in his eyes. All with magical restraints added on, courtesy of Thor, of course. It's okay. I pat his shoulder. I don't expect you to understand my brilliant plan. Maybe when you graduate from an apprentice into an actual sorcerer, I can fill you in. I gave him a good-natured smile. MMMPFPMFMFP. He clearly was touched by my words. Now, the judge addressed this courtroom. Once again, I will iterate that this is a highly unusual situation, as we're taking an unusual approach. He turned towards the prosecution. Would you like to cross-examine the witness, Mr. Walker? No, Your Honor. The prosecution still looked a bit unsure of my scheme. The prosecution rests. Okay. The judge nodded. You may call your witness now. Yes, Your Honor. Walker stood up. The prosecution calls Thor Odinson to the stand. Oof. This does not look good for you, Loki. I pursed my lips. Well, at least you won't have to worry about dropping the soap. I'm sure you're used to worse things. I ignored his muffled shouts. The god of thunder walked up, taking his place at the witness's seat, just like Loki. Going through the same song and dance, if just a bit more polite. Mr. Odinson. Walker addressed the god of thunder. Can you tell the court, in your own words, what it was like growing up with Loki? Well, Thor scratched his cheek. We are centuries old. It would take me many days to regale you all with tales of our youth. Let me be more specific then. The prosecutor clarified. Did your brother ever do anything mean? Mean. Thor looked surprised by the question. And I could tell he had no idea what was going on, as this was probably his first look at our legal system. Yes, I do remember one particular instance. When we were children, there was this time when Loki transformed himself into a snake. I, loving snakes as I do, went to inspect the creature in my arms. Holding it close to me, he transformed back and went nigh before stabbing me with his knife. All eyes turned to Loki, who looked rather proud of himself. Walker looked happy as well at Thor's words. And were there similar incidents during your childhood? Thor looked thoughtful. I remember quite a few. He smiled. There was the time he tried to drown me. The time he pushed me in front of a galloping horse. The time he tripped me off a waterfall. Oh, and there was the time he shot me in the arse with an arrow. Objection, Your Honor. I called out. Under what grounds? The judge asked. under the grounds that this is bad for my defense. The judge looked unamused. Proceed, he said dryly, looking back towards the prosecution. Sorry, Loki, I tried. I shrugged. I'm sure his muffled screams were words of encouragement. I just kind of ignored the next hour or so of testimony by Thor. Instead, I took out my phone again and began playing on it while Sir Wiggles handled this part. He would keep me abreast of any important turn of events. Hey, Loki! I nudged my client when a question popped into my head. If you were able to magically conceal some knives on you, why did you just escape during the chaos with your magic since it wasn't sealed away? He turned his head to look at me, then slammed it on the table. I pat his shoulder again. It's okay. We all made those kinds of mistakes when we were at that level. You have nothing to be ashamed of. When you become a master, you'll be able to look back and laugh at this. MMMPPPPPFFFF, he cried out. I was proud of him. He was already able to laugh so hard at the situation that he began to cry. Defense! The judge called out. Yes, Your Honor. I perked up. It's your turn to cross-examine the witness. He gestured to Thor. Of course. I smiled, getting up from my seat again. I walked up, leaning against the witness chair. Thor Odinson. I agreed politely. Big fan. Oh, it's nice to meet fans. Thor gave a smile reminiscent of Thorum. Indeed. I nodded. I'm a bit of a sorcerer myself. I even have a lightning spell that I named after you. I was only gushing a tiny bit. A spell named after me? Thor looked surprised. I am flattered. Well, just needed to get that out of my system. I ran a hand through my hair. Well, how about a question, eh? I gave a small chuckle, one shared by him. Thor Odin, would you please tell us, in your own words, how you would describe your brother? Describe Loki? Thor questioned again. Well, I suppose cunning would be the best description. Even when we went of foolish quests and might have otherwise met our ends, Loki often saved us by his cunning mind. Cunning, I repeated, a bit louder, turning towards the jury. The man who had been stabbed by his brother as a child called him cunning. I gestured to the god of thunder. And Thor, I continued, what part of his plan in taking over the world was cunning? I don't quite understand. Thor seemed lost. His plan for conquering the earth. Can you please point out the cunningness of it? To get an alien army to attack a single city, to target a single group of people and focus so intently on them that they were able to defeat said army? Which part of his plan was cunning? How about a more recent example? What cunning man would openly mock the very people we're going to judge him? Objection, Your Honor. The prosecutor jumped up. He's leading the witness. The judge turned to me. Schweinorg, I'll be more direct with my questions. I waved it off. Thor, how would you go about conquering the planet? Me. He looked thoughtful. As just a thought, I would besiege your industries of produce. Your planet does not have access to resources outside your race. You have no alliances, no talks with other species. Your people have yet to truly leave your own atmosphere. We are a long-lived race. We could simply wait you out while removing your sources of sustenance. There were murmurs amongst the crowd. Schweinorg, you better be going somewhere with this. The judge grumbled. I am, Your Honor. I would like to request a little leeway here. The judge let out a sigh. I'll allow it. Good. I nodded. As I was saying, based on your words, we can accept that Loki's plan was not the most brilliant one he's ever come up with. I would say no. Thor agreed. So a plan to conquer an entire planet, an entire species was rushed? Half-hearted? Does this sound like the normal Loki to you? I asked Thor again. When you say it like that, I agree that Loki's actions are out of the norm. He shot a look at his brother. It's almost like... I turned to the jury again. He wasn't in his right mind. I declared, as if he was being controlled. I slammed my hand down on the bench. Object, Your Honor, speculation. The prosecution rose up again. Sustained. The judge agreed. Rephrase that, Schweinorg, or move on. Very well. I straightened my tie. It's public knowledge that Loki had a scepter that could control people's minds. So, Thor Odinson, are you aware of where he procured such an item? I am not. Thor admitted. So it's unlikely he just picked it off the street. He hummed. If his own brother, whom had been stabbed by him in the past, admits that Loki was acting out of character, is it so hard to put 2 and 2 together here? Objection. The prosecutor rose again. It's been noted that the staff has to amplify certain emotions to successfully control someone. Yes, we all read the report for the trial. I waved him off. I will better explain. I turned to Thor again. Thunder God, you mentioned that Loki would oftentimes bully you at children, yes? That is an adequate way of putting it. He nodded. Pulling your hair, making fun of you, pulling pranks to get a laugh? Aye, those were common occurrences. He unconsciously reached for his hair. So, he had been seeking your attention, has he not? I turned towards the jury once again. Loki Odinson is someone who sought Thor's attention ever since they were young. I declared. And has that ever changed since growing up? Nay, Thor confirmed. These have become common occurrences throughout Asgard, and no one questioned them anymore. Very interesting. Mr. Schweinorg, this is your last warning. You are getting off topic. The judge spoke up. Your Honor, I am truly working towards something here. Last warning, he said again before ushering for me to continue. I nodded at his meaning. My goodwill was running short. Thor Odinson, has Loki ever showed an interest in a woman? A woman, Thor mumbled. Aye, he once tried to court Lady Sif. Thor seemed to reminisce at the memory. It turned out with him dyeing her hair black with magic and unable to reverse the change. I believe she preferred it the darker color, but would never admit it. Lady Sif, huh? And if I may ask, what is your relationship with this Lady Sif? Well, we had a few flings over the years, but we had never remained together. Aha! I nodded along. And his behavior towards her, did it start before or after you showed some attraction towards her? Well, it started. He looked blanked for a moment. After I had expressed some interest in her. But I do not see how that is important. Neither do I. The judge stated but didn't stop me. Is it not obvious? I once again addressed the entire room. The staff takes hold of strong emotions and twists them to turn the victim into a puppet. What more powerful emotion is there than love? I turned towards Loki, giving him a wink. His eyes widened in horror as he realized what I was getting at. Loki always wanted your attention. I pointed towards Thor. He got jealous when you sought out a companion. I looked towards the jury. And what happened when you showed such goodwill towards this planet? He lashed out and tried to destroy it. I decided to go for the killing blow. It's all because Loki Odinson is in love with you. Loki! Thor looked utterly dumbfounded. That impossible Thor paused. But then we. He looked lost. And there was the time. He stopped again. Dear Odin, Thor whispered, turning towards his brother. I'm so sorry, Loki, I did not know. Thor looked at his brother with sadness in his eyes. Loki visible wretched in his bindings. Even his magical energy began to try and tear apart the restraints he had on him. Brother, peace. Thor stood up. I promise we shall have a true talk about these feelings of yours. I am sorry I never noticed the signs before. Loki turned towards me with hatred in his eyes. I smirked. The defense rests, Your Honor. I walked back to my seat among the murmurs of the courtroom. I even winked towards the cameras that were televising this across the entire world. I leaned back in my chair, hands behind my head as the jury began to read their verdict. We, the people of New York, find the defendant not guilty of all charges levied against him. The courtroom erupted in shouts of indignation. Even Loki, who was sporting many more restraints, looked at me with complete shock. I let out a content sigh. I'm good. Brother! Thor swooped over, quickly tearing off his bindings. I knew there was reason for these despicable acts. We shall return to Asgard, and our parents will help you work through all that ails you. Release me, you oaf! Loki screamed. I am not in love with you. He snapped his head in my direction. And you. His hand lit up with a green fire. I will turn your soul to. I snapped my fingers, dispelling his fire. Go play somewhere else. I opened a portal and deposited the two brothers outside the courtroom. Ha! Someone walked up to me. So how'd you do it? Tony Stark. I pursed my lips. What do I owe the pleasure? Was it magic? He wiggled his fingers. I am appalled you think I would stoop to such dishonorable means. I huffed. Aha! He didn't believe me. I don't believe you. So how'd you do it? I bribed the right people. I shrugged. He looked speechless. You know I'm going to have to tell someone. Why the hell did you tell me that? Go ahead. I snorted. Tell the world that I bribed Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. For real? What could you possibly bribe him with? I have like $1 bajillion, and there's no way in hell I could bribe him to not get justice for what Loki did. Tesseract, I stated. That's where it ended up. Tony looked annoyed. I searched the entire planet for like a week, non-stop, and you had it the entire time. Yup. I popped the last letter. God damn it. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Still, didn't think he'd let this happen. A lot of people are going to be upset he didn't get in trouble. Oh no! I shook my head. He still has to face Asgardian justice. Wait. So Loki still gets in trouble. We get the Tesseract. So this is a good thing? Tony sounded conflicted. I feel like this is a bad thing, but I can't find any faults in it. So what was the point of this whole thing with Loki loving Thor? 'Cause I met them both, and that's complete crap. Distraction. I shrugged again. People are stupid. They'll latch onto this little tidbit more than the innocent verdict. I hate that I can't argue with you. Tony snorted. But what's the real reason? Fuck Loki. I crossed my arms. Dude's an ass. So you make the whole world think that Loki is in love with his brother? Yup. Tony blinked, a smile forming on his face. Hey, you got a card? I flicked my wrist, a card appearing between my fingers. Wilhelm Henry Schweinorg, attorney at law. I recited with a grin.